talking about journeys, destinations, culture, adventure, gear, conservation, and all the things we haven't yet thought of. This episode is brought to you by Sunware Solar Technology, a premium manufacturer of fixed and portable solar panels for overlanding vehicles and marine applications. Designed and manufactured in Germany, Sunware panels are tested under the harshest environmental conditions to ensure rugged reliability for years to come. Trust Sunware for your solar energy needs, no matter where your adventures take you. Check out their website at sunware.solar. You'll find the link in the description below. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the At Overland Europe podcast. Have you ever struggled with your vehicle's electrical system? If so, you're in for a treat today. Anton, our man in South Africa, is back with us, and he's diving into one of his favourite and occasionally frustrating topics, the auxiliary electrics in his Land Rover Defender. Anton is the founder of 4x4 Out Far, an organisation dedicated to incredible humanitarian and conservation work in some of Botswana's remotest regions. For him, having a dependable electrical system to keep all his equipment charged and running is essential. Trust me, he's faced more than his fair share of challenges over the years. His learning curve has been steep, but he's narrowed down what works best for him. I'm eager to hear all the insights he's gathered along the way. So, let's dive in.
You know what this is?
Biltong. Oh, that's ostrich biltong.
It's so good.
Oh, just shut up.
It's so good. And I've got dry balls too. But I don't want to open that because people don't respect it. So I'm going to open it and then hide it so no one gets any.
When you say people don't respect it, they just eat it.
They'll come home and they're like, oh, what's this? Like a bunch of animals. No, they're not like that at all. How are you, Mike?
I'm well. I'm very well. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, it's been cool. I've had quite a weekend, and been in like an amazing spot.
I saw some of the pictures and videos you sent, yes.
Two amazing spots. Yeah, one was in the middle of the Karoo, which is desertish-like, and the other one was on a private property on the beach, about 2 hours, 20 minutes from here. It was battling leaving that one. I really battled. Oh, I hadn't showered or cleaned or washed for about 2 or 3 days. So I got to the beach, set up camp, worried about the wind because it's the beach, set up camp, and then went for a swim and just like lavished the coolness and the sea water, and it was so good. So good.
So we're talking here middle of March, and the temperatures at this end are sort of somewhere a little bit above zero. And the temperatures at your end are slightly better, I believe.
Today and yesterday we're sitting at about 35, and that's the big, at least we don't have the humidity. The problem is there's no wind, so the heat is just sitting.
Right.
And you just can't hide. So you've got to drive, to get the aircon. And we don't have aircon in our house because the amount of days like this doesn't warrant the cost of having. And we have a pool. So I'll just go and sit in the pool for like an hour.
Lucky you.
I know.
Lucky you.
It doesn't happen often, but I do enjoy it.
I envy you. Yeah. Yes, the weather here is much colder. So let's do a topic change.
Oh.
We were going to talk today about electricity in your vehicle because you've spent, a couple of years now, I suppose, trying to get it right.
Yeah.
Your domestic electric supply.
That's right.
But I suppose let's kick it off by saying, why do you need it? Because you disappear into the bush.
Yeah, I think let's not say me. I think, in general, people, when you go on your weekend campers, you can get away with the eco flows and whatever, and even that I have a big problem with, with them, not necessarily what they do, but let me be clear, not eco flow, but those systems.
Right.
When I leave my house, my inverter, I got a fridge and a freezer. I've got charging systems for drone and cameras and whatever, and those are key. And charging the battery for that is very important because you want the battery to last, but you also want the battery to charge. And this is where I think a lot of people kind of miss the boat, and they just throw stuff in because their buddy has it, and they haven't really dug in and learned a little bit. You don't have to learn everything. You need to understand it and then put something in that works as a solution for you or for me.
I think the important thing here is the fact that when you're doing your humanitarian work, you leave home and you come back like 12 days or 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So you are completely dependent upon a reliable power supply.
Correct.
As you say,
yeah.
you've got your fridge, you've got other electronic equipment.
Yeah.
So if we roll back sort of like 2 years to when your dilemma started of trying to find the right solution.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that the press, dare I say that, there's always new stuff coming on the market. It's always bigger, better. It's got more bells and whistles. But I think what you've really found out is that you don't need the bells and whistles. You need the rudimentary
Correct.
solution. So if somebody's listening who's got no plan about what to do, where do they start? What's the beginning of all this?
Sure. So what all of us want is something that works with the least amount of cost, issues, and to get the maximum out of what you're installing. And that boils down to people understanding what their draw is, what their power draw is. So for example, I know that I have a fridge and I know that I have a freezer. Those are two separate units, Engel fridge and freezer. And I know that I'm drawing power and I can understand a lot. Yeah, I've got lights running and I've got chargers going and all that other stuff for phones and laptops and whatever. And where you start is doing a basic calculation what your power draws are. What are you taking out of the alternator? Because this is ultimately where it comes from. It all starts with the alternator putting power through the DCDC into the battery. What am I needing in order to make my system run smoothly so that it doesn't affect either of my batteries and my alternator? That's the starting point. Do you know what your power draw is? And this is where people go wrong. They rightly so listen to what social media says. They do a few YouTube searches and they go, this guy, I like the way this guy's got it set up. It's a similar vehicle to mine and it's sorted out and he's got a 3,000 watt inverter. Now, with a 3,000 watt inverter, you need a battery that supports that. But you also need a DC-DC that supports the power to go into the battery, but then also what is being drawn from the alternator. And the alternator is pretty important. Because without the alternator, your battery is not going to, your cranking battery is not going to work.
So does that mean, did you actually change your alternator as well on your vehicle? Because we're talking about a Land Rover Classic Defender, aren't we?
A proper Land Rover, not a new Disco 6 that everyone talks about. So yeah, on mine, I believe you can get a bigger alternator, but when you dig into these things and you understand, if you've got a Land Cruiser, you've got an Ineos, you've got all of these type of newer vehicles, is that what is your alternator pushing out? I know that my alternator is pushing out in total about 180 amps, give and take a few. Now, using a lithium battery, lithium is a hoarder. It just absorbs power. It just keeps taking it in. So until it gets completely saturated, then it'll go, okay, I'm done. And I'm putting in at the moment, because of the DC-DC that I've put in now, which I'm using Ctek, I'm putting in on average when I start up about 40 to 42 amps out of that 180 amps. Now, the 180 amps from your alternator that goes towards the radio, the aircon, running the engine, charging the battery. When you put your lights on, your standard vehicle lights, all of those type of things come off the alternator, and whatever's left over can then be pushed into your DC-DC to charge your battery. Mine is a standard alternator. I don't have a smart alternator. So all your newer vehicles, your Discoveries, your Land Cruisers, your Ineoses, those all have smart alternators, which can pump a lot more, which then means that it's governed by the DC-DC that you put in. So the different versions of DC-DC, you've got Victron, Ctek, Synergy, you've got a bunch of others that are out there, and you pay for the higher version. So you pay for a 20 amp or a 30 amp or a 40 amp. And I've seen some now come out at a 50 amp. Victron's got a 50 amp, and I think I saw the other day like a 60 amp DC-DC, which to me is insane. I mean, you're just asking for trouble. So, once you know what your alternator is able to do and what its boundaries are, then you can start working backwards and you put it on however you want to do. What's my power draw? What can I put in? And that's where it starts getting fun.
You say it starts getting fun because That's the real crux of it, though, isn't it? I mean, that's
It is.
keeping your equipment alive and freezing or cooling. Because
Correct.
let me just ask you a quick question here. How long do you spend in one place without driving, i.e., without the alternator doing its job?
I'm in a different place every day.
Okay, so you're driving every day.
I'm driving, but I'm not always driving for long distances. So, for example, I'll be in one region within the Okavango, and to go between the villages or into the Panhandle and into the Okavango itself might only be a 10, 15, 20-minute, 30-minute drive. Mm-hmm. So I would like to put as much power from the alternator into my battery. And what we have to consider within Africa, and you need to consider within Europe and North America and wherever, is that what is the cold going to do and what is the heat going to do? Now, heat is a killer all around. Heat Heat doesn't allow charging of lithium correctly. So lithium battles when temperatures start going 40, 45 and up, because units start playing games. The DCDC has a limit, a minimum running temperature, a higher running temperature. It's got a limit. And the more you move onto that limit, the lower it's going to pump the amps in. So for me, I have to carry a portable solar panel. Because if I'm sitting screening eyes at one school for a whole day, I can't have my fridge running and my freezer running all day, compensating for the heat to keep cool, but then also the battery's taking strain because it's going to be used a lot more. And then I don't drive long enough, so I have to keep topping up during the day. So I need a big enough solar panel, and I need a big enough battery in order to cope and compensate for that. And since the last time we chatted, I'm changing that to my battery, which I've just put in.
Again.
Yeah, I'm changing it. Yeah.
This is an ongoing dilemma.
It's a process, Mike. It's a process. And, it's a process of elimination. And the more people like myself are out there, the more we start tweaking and realizing, and then we're going to look at what's the cost and what's the way off. So the bigger you go, the more weight, the more real estate. So I'm trying to go, I would rather top up 10, 15% than charge 50% of my battery. So I'm in that little sweet spot at the moment where I'm going, what's the highest amp battery that I can get that takes the least amount of space in my vehicle? That's where I'm finalizing getting into, and it costs. It's not cheap. It costs. It's something that I got to sell one battery, put the extra money in to get a bigger one.
So what battery are you looking at the moment?
So I've got a 200 amp hour.
Okay.
And I'm moving over to a 305 amp hour.
Oh, wow.
But the difference that I found a battery that's actually assembled, not made, in South Africa that is smaller casing than my 200 amp hour. So what they've done is they've said, let's not add space within the casing. Let's fill up everything inside the casing, but then allow air to breathe. Now, lithium, you can hang upside down. You can do anything you want with it. Mm-hmm. So there are things that make a difference. And if I can get a battery that's slightly smaller than my 200, but more power, I'm only, instead of drawing 10%, I'm now only drawing 5% overnight, for example. And I would rather have that because everybody, and I don't care who you are, everybody gets caught. You think, you know what, it's going to be fine tomorrow. I'm not going to charge my battery today. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to put the solar panel out because it's going to be perfect. And then it rains. And then what? And then you've got no power going in, but you've got power coming out.
Yeah.
So, you need to, collectively, we need to be a little bit smart. And I just have a history of when I park, my table is out, my awning is out, and my solar panel is out. And I have that done within 4 minutes. Yeah. All three of those.
So never find an excuse for not putting out your solar panel.
If the sun is out, keep your battery fully topped up as much as you can. Always. Yeah. Always. You're not going to ruin it. You're not going to affect it. It's got the algorithm, which is a whole nother problem. It's got the algorithms in order to keep it where they need to be. And that's something that it make it a good habit, because when your batteries die or they get low, we need to then start the engine.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there running the engine for half an hour. Engine is fuel because you're topping up a battery.
Sure.
So, there's so many other things where we go. In fact, on my last project into the Okavango last year, early November, there was no diesel in the area that we went. And the guys from EcoExist, the elephant fencing, they helped me out. They said, right, well, we have a guy going to get supplies. I gave them my jerry cans. I said, well, here's the money. When he comes, please, can you just fill up diesel for me? So, because you can get caught very easily. So diesel is, fuel is a priority. I could get petrol. I can't use petrol in my diesel.
Right.
So I've learned.
You didn't actually try that, did you?
Not me, but someone else put petrol in my diesel engine.
That's definitely not good.
Didn't work out very well, no. for anybody.
I'm sure. Right, let's get to basics then. So yes. You've got your fridge, you've got your freezer, you've got other bits and pieces. So what is the draw that you have on your electricity, on your reserves?
Okay, so I will average with everything running at the same time. Running at the same time. Around, and this is just me, this is without the some of the big stuff running. So if my photographer plugs in his laptop is like 11 amps. I don't know how or why. I've told him to buy a new one because it's not possible. But I'm pulling at least around 10, 11 amps just on my system. And I'm
with your equipment.
That's it. Just me. That's the fridge, that's the freezer. And I'm quite low in comparison to some people because the fridges that I use have the lowest amount of power draw out of all the fridges that I've experienced and worked with and chatted to people about. So I'm drawing on average around 1.66, 1.7 amps when my fridge reaches temperature. Whereas other fridges, I won't mention names, they'll do a power draw of 4.5 amps per fridge, 5 amps per fridge. And one of the newer fridges that I read, Dometic, I actually went in and had a look because I looked at the Dometic. It looks nice. It looks clean. And then the first thing I look at is the power draw. And the power draw on the 45 liter, I don't know what that is in quarts, but the power draw on the 45 liter was sitting at 8.5 amps. That's on their list. If you open the lid, it's on the inside, it'll tell you. 8.5 amps.
That's a lot.
So it's a lot, and I don't understand how they get. I think something that can't be right. I mean, listen, when you turn the fridge on, you're going to get a high power draw because it goes, okay, hang on, the fridge hasn't been used. It's sitting at 20 degrees. It's summer outside. You then turn it on. It goes, all right, I've got to pump power in order to get down to whatever zero. And that 8.5 is a lot. So immediately I was like, something's not right. But even still, I mean, compared to the 1.7 amps when I'm running on temperature, then it's just not possible. So I think I'm running quite low on my power requirement and draw. So I've got to compensate enough for that.
Okay, so you've got your fridge, your freezer. What else have you got that you're running?
I have a inverter running. I've got a WeBoost running. I've got a router running with a SIM card in. I've got the 2 fridges. I've got lights underneath my vehicle, lights in my vehicle. And then I've got charging, my iPad charging for navigation, whatever. I've got phones charging and drones. I have a whole little charging station at the back of my vehicle. So that's generally fully logged with USB and Anderson plugs running.
So that's basically, let's say, of a normal traveler going on a couple of weeks holiday or long weekends, etc.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's the setup which covers most requirements.
It does. It's a simple but very effective setup. Mine is designed purpose-built for my humanitarian work. So purpose-built meaning that I know I'm going into the bush for about this long. How long can I keep my meat without going off or crazy, or vegetables going crazy, the milks, possibly a beer and wine, I can't confirm or deny. But I've got to compensate for that amount of time. And if something goes wrong, what am I going to do? if it goes wrong, how long will it take for me to go, and can I fix it myself? And this is the other problem: is a lot of the newer technology coming out. Victron is a great product, but it's a very technical product. And there is maybe on a handful about 10 people that I know that know the technical sides of Victron. Everyone else, oh look, I can see it on the app. I can see what my percentage is. So, even that it becomes very, very technical, and you've got to collectively, which is why I say that if you're going away for a week and this is what you do, you're going into the Alps or you're going into, somewhere that's super remote. Where's your solace? I mean, even what's your solace? And winter is different to summer when you're looking at solar panels, So I changed my MPPT from a 15 amp to a 20 amp. So that that extra 4 or 5 amps makes a difference. Right,
we know now roughly what you need to charge. Your battery, you're now upgrading to 305.
300, yeah.
Or 300, yeah. Your DC to DC charger, that you said is a Ctek.
So at the moment, I'm on Ctek, and I've got the Ctek, the lithium charger, which is the C250 SE, which charges lithium, and then the SA charges an AGM battery. And I've got the Smartpass. Now, the Smartpass is the booster. The Smartpass will say, you got 20 amps off the C250, and the Smartpass goes, okay, well, there's a little bit of amps that's released from the alternator that's not being used. I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it into your battery while you're driving through the alternator. So I can sit on average between 35 to 40 amps pumping into my battery.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It's very, very good. It's the highest that I've ever had, actually, which is really nice. But then again, my requirements have changed. I started off at 105 amp hour battery, then to 150, then a 200. Now I'm going to a 305 amp hour battery. So, this is where the whale starts coming in. I'm going, okay, hang on, I've got to take the power. I've got to start increasing power into my battery, into my lithium. Where's that going to come from? It can only come from the alternator. So being able to boost it from the alternator plays a very big role. And that's what we want. We want to be able to use the alternator to do the work within reason.
All right. So driving, you're recharging from the alternator. When you're stationary, we're now talking solar panels. So let's take your new setup, 305 ampere battery.
Yeah.
What solar panel are you using to charge it?
So I'm using it's a 300 watt panel, which yields about 18 amps of power through the 20 amp MPPT to the battery. So if my power draw is sitting at around 10 amps, I'm pumping in about an 8 amps that's going into the battery, which means that overnight I've used from 100%, I've now used up to, let's just say, 85%. So it's drawing 10 and it's putting in 5 to 8, depending on the angle of where the panel is to the sun. So you want to keep putting in as much as you can, instead of just being equal. You don't want to, if you're putting in 10 and you're drawing 10, you're going to stay at 85.
The solar panel, of course, is, there are lots of, let's say, specifications, but they're all very dependent upon the position of the sun and the time of the year.
Correct. But they're also dependent technically on the VOC, which depends on your DCDC. And what that means is that if the DCDC can only handle 20 volts, for example, and your solar panel has a VOC of 24 volts, you could blow your DCDC. So you've got to double check the technicalities on. It's just looking apples for apples numbers. So you can say, all right, I'm going to plug it in, but I'm not going to blow my MPPT or blow my DCDC. Because in most cases you don't, which is where things differ. Is I go for one unit that does two things, which is a DCDC. It charges from the alternator, but then the same unit can also go with a solar panel. Okay. Whereas companies like Victron, they go, well, let's separate it. You have an MPPT, which is solar, and then you have a DC, which is just from the alternator. So if something goes wrong with one of them, you can still use the other for that purpose. So if the MPPT goes For the solar panel, you can still charge from the alternator, for example. So I have never, in fact, experienced that. And I've sunk a few of my electronics through the Okavango. So I have a bit of experience in it. Yes.
Yeah. You also said inverter.
Yeah.
We've been talking, I mean, you mentioned earlier, social media, you'll see lots of inverters which get bigger and better and 3,000 watts or whatever. How big is the inverter you use?
It's too big. I have a
Still too big.
I have a 500 watt inverter.
Right.
And I'd love to change it down to about a 250 watt inverter. So the inverter charges everything, things like laptops, because it's converting the power from 12 volts to like to 220 volts for us. So you want the power to be, you want what you're going to charge it with. So when you plug in your Euro 2-point plugs, they charge laptops, and you want to play a speaker and that type of thing, that will go through the inverter. Now, many of these guys are going for these 2.5, 3,000 watt inverters because they want to use what are those induction cookers, correct? Yeah. They want to use that, but not many people. I know 3 people that actually use induction, 2 in this country, in South Africa. Most of us still use gas.
Yeah.
So I now see people going, I want a 3,000 watt inverter, which is probably a little bit smaller than my torso. It's huge. It's huge. And all they're doing is charging a laptop and a few other bits and pieces, which will only draw. I mean, if I calculate my laptop, my photographer's laptop, maybe a speaker running, my router, and the WeBoost isn't on it, I'm maybe drawing at best, and I'm going like probably 100 watts of power. That's all I'm drawing. What do I need a 500 watt inverter for if I'm only going to draw at best that? If I start changing things up and I go, right, let's look into induction. Now I'm going, is my 300 amp hour battery enough for induction? Because then everything moves over to induction. Your kettle, how often do you use your kettle? Are you frying stuff at night? So now my battery's changing, my inverter's changing. Is my alternator enough to pump power through the DC? Is the DC big enough to put the power in? So this whole circle becomes questionable with depending on what your power draw is. And that's where things change. And that's where people get, they buy on what they see and not on what they know. And I tell people, I've got a Victron, a wonderful Victron inverter, but it's too big. I actually don't have anything here. It's like this big, and it weighs like 6 bricks, not even the weight of a brick. It's huge and it's heavy. And I'm going, I don't need that. I can get a smaller one, which is a little bit bigger, like double the thickness of my iPad, that I can put in.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference, being able to put stuff on top of it and things not dropping on it.
With all the time and effort you put into getting it right, you reckon now that you've sort of reached your ideal solution?
Every time we talk in the last few months, something's changed. So yeah. I think I got to choose my words carefully. I think I have. I had a bit of an issue with the Ctek 250 that was charging the battery to 100% and then just switching off. And it was like a public secret. No one could tell me what the problem was. And as usual, not really, actually. We think it was either the battery BMS that just turned off, or it had just had enough, or it was the heat. We were driving in 42, 45 degree temperatures. It was super hot. So there's a number of, there was a few I don't knows. What did happen is they replaced the Ctek, and then about a week or 2 later, we put in the new battery, the 200 amp hour, and the Smartpass, and things are running smooth. I drove the other day for 3 hours and nothing turned off. So I think I got a good solution. And Ctek's a great brand. And I hope someone from Ctek is listening to me. Great brand. But put the Bluetooth in your Ctek on. Activate it. We rely on data. I don't sit there looking at my phone, but I want to know what's being put in and what's coming out, because that tells me how long the battery is going to last.
Yeah.
There's an algorithm that'll work out a basic percentage. So obviously, if your fridge turns on, that will go down slightly. The fridge goes off, it goes back to normal. So it changes. But you're relying on third-party items. So you're relying, you collectively, for example, in my experience, I'm relying on a Victron Bluetooth shunt that's telling me what power is going in and what power is coming out. The current battery that I have has Bluetooth with BMS in it, and that's not even working properly. So now I'm going, what do I trust? Do I trust, this or that? And I actually have screenshots on it. There's a 20% difference in some examples, 20% difference between two different apps. That's telling me the battery app is telling me 66%, and the Bluetooth shunt from Victron is telling me 88%. That's huge. 20% is massive. 88, 89, 90, a difference of 3-4 amps, fine. Or percent, sorry, fine. But 20%, that's mental. That's different, a whole different problem. So when you talk to the Ctecs of the world, they go, oh, but what battery are you using? And what's your wiring? And what is this? And what is that? And I'm going, you can eliminate all of that drama of pointing fingers and activate the Bluetooth in the system. Apparently it's there. They just don't turn it on.
Okay.
It's a public secret, Mark. That's what it is.
That just makes it more complicated.
It completely makes it.
Yeah, you mentioned wiring a moment ago. Do you actually install this equipment yourself, or do you have it installed for you?
So I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. And I rely on a third-party company to do it.
Right.
So what I do, and I always ask hands-on first, is I go, I have a very good relationship with some guys down the road from me in Cape Town. And I'd say, I want to install this, but I want you to install this, but I want to be there with you. I want to learn. I want to understand, because there's a lot of wiring, and this is another thing where hypothetically, you've got one unit that has maybe 2 wires, and then you got another unit that's got 4 wires, and then you get a different type of unit that's got, for example, Victron, where you've got its own unit's got its own wires, and then you've got the MPPT that's got its own wires. So now you've got wires going around, and everything needs to be labeled and whatever. And people don't do that. So they go, here it is, it's installed, thank you very much, and you drive off. And you find a problem. You're driving along, corrugation shakes everything within a vehicle. Things come loose. Your Bluetooth shunt is not giving you the right reading. So you go, hey, something's wrong. The battery is jumping up and down. I don't know what's happening. You start freaking out. Do you know where to look for your wiring? Do you know what you're looking for? Do you have a fact-finding sheet? Now, for me, I'm in the middle of the Arc of Anger. Sometimes there's no ways for me to reach anybody, just to ask a few basic questions. So I'm now stuck on, I've got to fact find and look myself. So the least amount of wiring suits me. It makes my life a little bit easier and better, because now I'm going, okay, I remember we did this, and I can follow the line from here. I can check terminals. So, all these little factors people don't consider until you have to experience them for yourself. And everyone freaks out, everybody, the first time. We were driving back from through the Karoo now, which is very remote. We got onto the freeway to do a bit of a side thing, and my buddy's Subaru just died. We filled up fuel, drove out, and it just died. So we're now on the side of the road, and everyone thinks because I drive a Defender, I'm broken down. And I can't show you fingers because we're on camera. So everyone's like, oh, look, another Defender on the side of the road. But actually, it wasn't me. It was a Subaru, for the record. So you're there trying to fact find, and if it's your vehicle, you worry. You're like, cheapest, what's going to do? Like, how am I going to handle this? What's going to happen? And I just said to my mate, I was like, dude, count your blessings. Your vehicle's not working fine. Count your blessings. You're in a place where you've got signal. You've got network. You can get on the phone. You can figure it out. It was a Sunday, but it doesn't matter. There's people on the main road. It's okay. So understanding where your wiring is and your fuses are correct. I mean, you always check the fuse first, always. I've had some where I've just changed the fuse anyway. But to make sure the wiring is in the right place, stowed away, and you know what you're looking for and where you're looking is key. I mean, I had a chat I have a friend of mine, Liz, she's got a Troopy. And I said to Liz, get the guys that are doing the wiring to label it. Label what's this side and what's on that side. Because in most cases, you've got all your charging at the back and all your battery stuff is in the front. So you've got wiring going through the vehicle, and you want to go, okay, so I've got 4 red wires and I don't know which red wire is going to the back. So label it. And they didn't do that because they were like, no, we're in a rush. And I said, Liz, get them to label it. Choose Bob. She goes camping along the West Coast, electrical issue. She couldn't find exactly where the problem was because they didn't wire and she couldn't look for it.
Yeah.
So these things, I mean, it's a small, simple thing, but the guys installing it, just label it.
So basically what you're saying is that once you've established what you need and you've listened to people recommending the right product for your situation, if you don't really understand electronics, don't do it yourself. Go to a professional and have it installed properly. And then when they're doing that, ask them, A, to label all the cables.
Correct.
B, maybe to provide a circuit diagram.
Correct.
So that when the inevitable happens, and it's not a case of if, it's probably a case of when, especially as you said, you're driving on heavy corrugations, things bounce around, get loose, then at least you're in a situation to, worst case, get on the phone, hopefully, and then ask the people who installed, what do I do? But if you're not in a position to do that, to grab that wiring diagram and then go through it and figure it out.
Exactly. And Mark, I mean, it's a wiring diagram is key. Using a professional installer is key. And I know some professional installers, a very big global brand that still sometimes can't get it right themselves. You have to justify, they need to explain the thickness of wires and why. Are the fuses in the right place? So, if a fuse goes, it's there for a reason so that nothing else goes crazy. And, that there's a difference between, I've seen people install house wiring into a vehicle, and there's a difference between wiring. People will take a mediocre, like a 1 gauge wire and put it up against through the cranking battery and the alternator into the DCDC. That wire gets so hot, and soon something's going to go wrong. Is there a fuse on that? If the fuse keeps blowing and the fuse is hot, there's a number of easy fact finding. Is it the DCDC that's not doing it correctly? Is the wiring not thick enough? I mean, the wiring at the moment from my cranking battery and DCDC to the back is so thick they had to drill a bigger hole, which I don't like drilling holes in my vehicle, but in order to make it work correctly, they had to do that. And that means I'm not losing any amps, I'm not losing any power from the front and the back. And obviously the longer it is, the more ohms you will lose. So you want to try and have the thickest amount of cable, not overkill, but the thickest amount of cable for your use. And that only comes from the professional diagrams. And if you buy a DC-DC, for example, Ctek as an example, they'll actually tell you in the pamphlet, they'll tell you what the thickness should be. And that's key. It's key to know that your wiring is put on correctly and your terminals are correct. I mean, even terminals are a thing, Mike. There's a difference between an Anderson plug and a Anderson plug, an unbranded. And I've had, movement is everything. And what actually happens, I don't know if I can show you, but Andersons sit on top of each other like that and they rub like that. And over time, you get dust and dirt and all sorts of stuff inside there, and they start losing connection. And you start having different problems. So you check the wiring, you check all sorts of things, but then the joins become very different. I went out and I bought only Anderson lugs and Anderson connectors. And I cut wires and I redid them all again because, people have used the wrong wire. They've put the wrong Anderson for price on. They've gone cheap. And everyone thinks that, an Anderson is an Anderson, and I can physically take photos or scan and say, look at this. You can actually see the difference. I've just experienced it. It took me 2 days from the solar panel where I bought it. They had gray Andersons on. And for me, I have gray is my power going out, red is my power going in. So I color code mine. So I know if I plug it in, I'm not going to blow something. And it just wasn't connecting. I left the lugs the way they were, and I changed the Anderson from gray to red, and it wasn't connecting. It was like just sliding in and out like this. And it took me a day and a half to go, all right, I'm done. I'm just going to cut the lugs, going to put proper brand new ones on, and I'm going to leave it at that. And it worked instantly.
Right. So again, there you're also saying don't skimp on the quality of even the smallest items in the whole setup.
100%, Mike. The cost of your vehicle in comparison to the cost of a lug or an Anderson plug or wiring is very different.
Yeah.
I had this chat on the weekend with my insurance broker, and I said to him, how many of your other clients have a lithium fire extinguisher?
Not many, I'm guessing.
Not many. Yeah, not many.
Yeah.
And it's a small thing. Wiring is it's one of the top reasons that vehicles burn down is wiring.
Yeah.
In Southern Africa, maybe Australia, I think, we get a lot of dry grass that's high that gets caught up under the vehicle, and then heat in the radiator, heat under the vehicle, they start burning. But when a lithium battery burns, no fire extinguisher except for a lithium fire extinguisher will turn it off. We'll take it out. You can do what you want. You can use a normal one, and the flames will go away. But because of the intense heat, it just pops up again, and then you've used up your fire extinguisher. Your normal one, your lithium one, obviously that changes.
Right. Which brand of fire extinguisher have you got in your vehicle? Come on.
I think it's called All Safe. It's a local brand. It's branded and it's labeled and it's got everything on it that I needed and I approve. And I actually took a photo and I sent it to my insurance broker to say, here, there's proof. This is what I have, because they're not cheap. It's 2,500 Rand. I don't know what that is in euros, but it was 2,500 Rand, where a normal fire extinguisher is like 450. It's very different. So, it's called All Safe. They're a very big fire company in South Africa. They do a number of different products. So mine's from them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually something which people don't think about, the right fire extinguisher.
No. And wiring is one of the leading issues. Electrical. You can't use water. You can't use sand to put wiring out. So the only thing that you can do is try and have a breaker to kill the power going between the vehicle. And then use something that'll work properly. Yeah, a fire extinguisher that'll work.
I think the thing about cables and wiring burning is that they're just basically not accessible. They're always tucked away somewhere. Your engine's hot.
You're right.
Yeah.
Your engine's hot. Where are your batteries? Your wiring is within the engine. Some people take it. It depends obviously on the vehicle. If you've got a Trippy, if you've got a Fortuna, you've got an Ineos Quartermaster, for example. You've got vehicles. Don't smile at me like that. You just been in one. So you got wiring that goes from the engine bay through the vehicle, through a grommet, into all sorts of different, it vasts. Your wiring in the Grenadier is in the center underneath the middle seat. Some people leave their charging in the vehicle, but the battery is outside. So the wiring has to go through somewhere. So having the least amount of joins in a cable is key. So try and have one cable that goes from the front all the way to the back. Yeah. Without having joins, because the extra joins is extra issue. And that's what I just experienced. Sorry, that's what I just experienced in Okavango last year. I was like, this is jumping up and down. What's going on with my system? It's not here. It's not normal. And about a month ago, I took out a red Anderson plug that someone before me had put in that went in my Defender, from the battery box out the vehicle in through underneath the driver's seat to the back. So when we redid the wiring for this vehicle, they just said, we'll just put an Anderson plug on and just join it into that. And it worked okay. But then again, dust, corrugation, moisture, it played role. I took it out and immediately the difference was insane. Immediately. I could monitor, everything was more accurate without it being jumping up and down. And it's just having the least amount of wiring is, for me, gold. Absolutely gold.
I think, again, that comes down to, having a professional put it in. They've got their experience. They know what to do.
Yeah.
You drive, as I say, a classic Defender, lovely vehicle. So where have you positioned everything? Where is your, let's say, domestic battery? Where are you keeping that?
So my cranking battery is always under the front passenger seat. Many people that get Defenders like mine, they actually put the lithium right next to the cranking battery. And the problem with that is it's so congested inside there, because then they take the DCDC and they go, okay, we need to find space inside here. So they take the brackets out, they put a bit of a space at the bottom, and they move something all the way forward or all the way back. And inside is just a cluster spider web of wires. And one of my projects, you heard me say now, I sunk my vehicle through, and in the Defender's amazing, there's like beautiful gaps in the corners, because they charge a lot of money to put gaps in the corners, so the water and sand went straight through. And I said, no ways, I'll never do that again. So I built a little battery box, and I took the wiring from the front. There's grommets on the inside. This is my older vehicle. There's grommets on the inside, and I took the wiring through to the back, and then I just put my DC-DC in the front, and I left my lithium battery, my auxiliary battery at the back.
Okay.
And I will never put it in the front there again, because when you have to change your cranking battery, or you need to check something, you've got to literally remove everything.
Yeah. And
it's not just it's open, have a look. You've now got to spend half a day removing things. You've got to take all the wiring off. You've got to unplug the vehicle. You've got to take the vehicle wiring off the terminal. It's not worth the drama. So I keep mine separate and accessible. Everything is separate and accessible. I got 3 wires that go from the front to the back. My negative and positive from the DC-DC, and the monitor wire for the shunt. Those are the only 3 wires that go from the front to the back.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.
Simplicity.
It can only be one of those 2 wires, because what really matters is your positive and your negative from the front batteries. So I know I'm only looking at this one or that one. There's no gray area with 6 or 8 wires. When I took, and I liked my Victron product, but when I took the Victron product out, I took about, I actually have a photo somewhere. I took a pile of wiring out my vehicle, a pile like this, that I didn't need anymore. It's huge. It's a lot.
Been there, done that. I've had exactly the same problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a challenge, eh?
It is indeed. I just want to touch on your solar panel one more time. You said that when you arrive somewhere, you get your chair out, you get your awning out, and your solar panel. That means your solar panel isn't fixed to the roof.
No, I don't want that either. So, Mark, when you're charging, you've gone through the effort of getting the professional wiring and installing done. You've gone through the effort of figuring out what you, like what's your power draw, what's your battery, what's your DC-DC. So you've gone through all of this, right? And then you mount your solar panel on the roof. And the sun is over there, but your solar panel is sitting facing that way. And you're like, well, the wind's coming from there. So I want to put my rooftop tent against the wind so that it's, less drama inside. But the sun's over there. No, and I'm going, no, I don't want that. I want the flexibility to gain as much power out of my system as possible. So I will take it and I will face it in the direction of what I need to. And in most cases, if we camped in the same place for a day, well, not camped, if we parked in the same place for a day, I only need to move it 3 times. I need to move it. I need to put it out in the morning, change it for midday and end of the day. I don't need to, it takes me 30 seconds less than that to move it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm a big fan of what I call portable solar panels.
Yeah.
For exactly that reason. And also, on really hot days, you can park the car in the shade and still leave the solar panel in the sunshine. Correct.
So I have 2 5-meter extension cables for my solar panel. On projects, I take both, but I generally only use one, because the cable that comes from the solar panel isn't long enough. So I've left a 2.5 meter extension in the panel bag, and then I have another 5 meters if I need to. But then again, the longer you go, you lose the ohms and the power that goes in there.
Precisely.
So I might lose 3-4 amps pumping in there because of the distance. Yeah. And 5 meters, it's noticeable. It is noticeable. So, solar panels, they are getting slightly cheaper because they're becoming a lot more common. And it depends on what you want to spend. There's different brands. I saw this Red Oak brand out of Australia. It was a 240 watt solar panel, but it pumped in like 24 amps into the battery. I got a 300 watt solar panel and I'm only getting 18 at best. So, but you pay for that. That's what you pay for. So I don't know if I have the money to buy one of those solar panels, but I have a 300 watt that I have to deal with for now. I've just got it. Mm-hmm. I can't change the solar panel now.
You've invested in that.
I'm going to deal with the battery first.
Yes. So when are you getting your new battery fitted?
I'm waiting for the guys to confirm the price, and then I'm hoping to have it. I'm hoping to have it soon. I need to phone the guy. Today's Wednesday. Now I was supposed to have the price on Monday. So if that's the case, I would have picked it up by now and dealt with it. Yeah. Because it brings different challenges, Mike. You got different batteries have different. It's not the standard square battery size with a terminal positive and negative on the top anymore. Those days are gone. Now you've got these battery banks that you get that the 200 or the 300, and they've got a positive and negative terminal on the sides that take a 13 or an 8 mil screw bolt. And then my current one has the big 170 amp Anderson and the smaller 50 amp Anderson. So it all works out very differently. Now I've got to find a way to mount this new one inside so that it doesn't run away, when I brake and I hit a bump and then it lands on the windshield, so because it's weight. Although it's smaller, it's carrying a lot more of the lithium batteries inside. My current one, I think, is sitting at 30 kilos, I think.
Wow.
My current one. Yeah, I think it's 30 or 20 kilos. I think it's 30 kilos. Yeah. Which is weight. So I might be sitting at a little bit more than 30 kilos, but a smaller package, which means my real estate is a little bit easier for me to deal with. So there I'm now going to go for the way off. If I go for the 305 amp, battery, am I pumping in enough power into it? Is it the right size that I can use, that I can pack it in correctly in my vehicle, and can I put stuff on top of it? Lithium's great. You can hang it upside down. There is no right or wrong. You can hang it upside down if you want. It'll obviously 30 kilos is heavy. It'll come off somewhere, but you can, but at least I'm looking at the options of going, can my vehicle handle the weight? Yes, it can. The size, it's much better than my current 200 amp. It's a little bit smaller. Where are the terminals? Are the terminals in a place where they can get hit, bumped, come loose? Can I get to them? And how am I going to hold this flipping thing down?
Yeah.
How am I going to hold this thing down? My current one came with four brackets on the sides. Mm-hmm. So I had it was quite hectic. I think it's like a 4 mil thick steel bracket that I had bent. I screwed holes into my drawer slider, which is steel and aluminium. I bolted it down with those round O-ring loops, and then I mounted them on the side. So I screwed in holes on the side. So I'm holding it from going, like this way, and then I put a ratchet strap over the top so it's not going to fly up. So you can imagine. I mean, if you calculate it, you're doing, you've got, say, 30 kilos, you hit a bump and you slam on brakes, and then the thing flies up and you slam on brakes. So you take your speed times the weight. If I'm doing 50 kilos times by 30, that's the weight going from the back all the way to the front. And that will create a lot of damage and dead people.
Kinetic energy.
Yeah. I've experienced a small fridge. It's called the Inbel B from Natural Luna. It's small. It's like this big. Mm-hmm. Takes cans in the like a center console. Hadn't been tied down, and sadly the lady had an 8-month-old baby in it, and sadly she lost the tire, went up the bank and rolled the vehicle. And this Inbel B I don't want to tell you, the baby was amazing. I don't know. The baby was perfect condition, but the mom didn't make it.
Wow.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah, it's horrible.
Scary.
So, these are all things that have to be considered, and going to Doing wiring with just anybody is just not, it doesn't count. All these little things make a big difference. Anyway, we're going off topic.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what we're going to do, though. We're going to draw up a list and make it available of exactly sort of how you've now put everything together.
I completely agree with you. I was actually thinking about that, where you can ask yourself questions and ask the installer questions.
Yeah.
And that's going to be key, because every installer carries their own brands that they're going to want to push.
Correct.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use it, because you can always take your own brand that you feel confident with. In my vehicle at the moment, I've got 3 different ways that I can charge batteries, 3 different brands that I can charge in my vehicle at the moment. I've got the Ctek, which is nice. I've got another one called WR&D, which is made locally, which is a third of the price of these bigger brands, the Victrons, the Cteks, and the whatevers of the world. And it's smaller. It's like this big. It's tiny. And then I've got another Aussie brand that I'm just trying now in the back as a MPPT, and that's a 20 amp MPPT. And in fact, I took a Victron 15 amp MPPT with Bluetooth out to put in one that's a 20 amp that doesn't have Bluetooth. And my mate's like, oh, but it's got Bluetooth. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah, but it's a Victron product with Bluetooth. I don't care. I'm getting 20 amps, but I do have the Victron shunt, which is telling me what my power going in and out is.
Yeah.
And that's more important. Having a Bluetooth MPPT is, what am I going to look at the Bluetooth for? I want to know that, is it on or is it off? That's all I care about. So yeah, I think having a sheet would be key and very helpful. I'll probably go through it myself. Question myself, did I have it right?
Let's have a look at the system which you've now got, or which you're going to sort of complete within the next few days.
Yeah.
And let's just list all the different components you've got in that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, regardless of the brands, etc., that setup is working for you right now. It's got you covered. And
Correct.
it's a good starting point. And once we've maybe gone through again, what is your average draw per day with everything attached, that gives anybody who's interested a starting point to say, right, if that's a similar scenario to what I've got, then that is a potential solution.
Yeah.
All right,
true.
let's do that.
Fine. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think that list is going to be great, because I have a list. I actually have printed cards at the back of my vehicle that are laminated, where I go through, okay, do I have a jacket if the weather changes? Have I packed the camping toilet? Do I have fire lighters? Do I have my Braille camping box? Do I, all these things to go in case I leave something, because I don't want to leave anything.
Yeah.
And in most cases, I would leave one thing, whether it's my flask or something else. I would leave something. But having these cards and having this kind of like a tick-off sheet would be great. Yeah, checklist. Yeah, I agree.
Good. So when are you off again? When are you going to go off and do something exciting?
I leave on Sunday to go on the East Coast. I'll be wild camping a little bit again on the beach. And then early next month, I leave on the 2nd. I'm not leaving on April Fool's Day. I'm leaving on the 2nd for the Okavango. Yeah, I'm going up to work with human-wildlife conflict. And I'm hoping my buddy comes with, and we're going to double check some of the kids that we screened for our specs last time.
Okay.
I'm hoping he's coming, and we're going to go and just check only the kids that we gave specs to, go and just say hello and go and check and make sure that they're okay, because there's so many different scenarios that they deal with. Some of them believe that if you wear specs for too long, your eyes go into the back of your head. And some of them the parents are like, no, I want to wear the specs instead. So they take them from the kid, which is
crazy.
But it is, but nevertheless, it's a thing.
Another one of the challenges you have to cope with.
It's crazy, man. Yeah. We've had parents that have declined their kids getting specs because we personally didn't ask in advance, which is not possible because we only get there, at the school on the day. But we work very closely with the local people and the local foundations that are on the ground, and they do all their homework and all their research. So it's not like it was a secret. Yeah. But we need to, I just want to be thorough in my work. That's all.
Which is good. And you're doing great work.
Thank you. It's tiring. It's hot.
No, but it's important work which you're doing. I love what you're doing with the kids with the eyeglasses, and also your recent projects with human-wildlife conflict and things like that.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Mike.
Valuable.
I'm actually putting up I'm busy testing a new video up at the moment, making sure the sound and everything's fine. But I'm doing a series, I think it's episode 16, 17 or 15, 16, 17 or something like that now, where I'm talking to the local herders from Claus. And I'm saying, well, like, what's your most terrifying experience that you've had? And it's amazing to listen to these herders. And like, the lady was in camp alone and an elephant just walked in and just completely scared her away, that it took her like days to go back and just say, okay, Really? One guy was herding, the second one of the series I was doing, the guy was herding the cattle, and there was a male lion that was pretty angry because they held their ground. They put the cattle all together and they stuck their ground, and they scared the lion off. Well, it was outnumbered. And then there's going to be a third one that I know is coming out, where it was amazing. This guy has been there the longest, and I said to him, like, what's your most terrifying moment? And it took him about a minute to like get it out, because English isn't their first language. So it took about a minute for him to just gather his composure. And he said there were 4 of them herding. There's one in the front, one at the back, and 2 on the side. And he said they were herding, and they saw a lion, and 2 of the herders just ran off and left them alone. So now he's away from his buddy, and there's only 2 of them and cattle. So, you can imagine some of the trauma that these guys have gone through, and they're amazing. So it's so nice to have, for me to share those experiences and those scenarios that are legit. There's no nonsense or script, nothing like that.
Yeah. So people should tune into your YouTube channel, which is 4x4 Outfar.
Correct.
And also visit your website, 4x4outfar.com.
That's it.
And then they can learn more about what you do and hear some of your amazing tales.
Come and listen, come and watch, and it's just amazing that all these things are happening out there, and like no one really knows about it. So I'm loving being able to share it, and I'm loving being able to put it out there for people to, try and get some form of experience, in what it's like in these different worlds.
Yeah.
Very different worlds. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I tell you what, let's bring today to a close.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your insights. Lots of information in there about how to set up a power resource for the vehicle.
Yeah.
And we'll back this all up with a few checklists, which we can draw up together.
Yep.
And we'll also create a list of the products or the setup you currently got.
Yeah.
And what am I going to say? I'm going to say enjoy the rest of the week and look forward to going out to the coast and doing some wild camping at the weekend.
Oh, man, I can't wait. So, yeah, thanks very much, Mike, for the time. And it's always been fun sitting, connecting and sharing and chatting with you. You're a like-minded guy that has a lot of knowledge yourself. So to be able to, speak apples to apples is fantastic. I really enjoy it. Thank you.
All right, then. Well, you take care. Speak soon.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the At Overland Europe podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and download our app for more adventures and exclusive content. Remember, you can find our guest social media and websites linked in the description below. Until next time, safe travels.